Welcome to VERSED, the ASCAP podcast. I'm Eric Philbrook, and I'm thrilled to share this special episode with you. It's Black History Month, and as part of ASCAP's month-long celebration, our guests today will talk about their experiences being Black music creators right now. Our featured guest today is Amythyst Kiah, an East Tennessee singer-songwriter and a member of the acclaimed Americana supergroup Our Native Daughters. Last week, Kiah released a new solo recording of her Grammy-nominated song, Black Myself, and Our Native Daughters has a brand new documentary out on the Smithsonian Channel called Reclaiming Our History. We'll hear her candid interview with Sarah Feingold a little later. But first, I'll kick it over to ASCAP's Senior VP of Membership, Nicole George Middleton, for a chat with our co-host, Wayne Barrow. Wayne is a film producer, manager, and entrepreneur, and co-founder, along with Mark Pitts, of ByStorm Entertainment. Back in the 1990s, their management roster included the late, great Notorious BIG. Wayne still works closely with Biggie's estate, and he'll share some insights about the new documentary, Biggie, I Got a Story to Tell, dropping on Netflix on March 1st. For more in-depth coverage of Black History Month, visit ascap.com/BHM 2021. Now, here's Nicole George Middleton speaking with Wayne Barrow.
Wayne Barrow, how are you?
Nicole? I'm blessed, and yourself?
I'm blessed too. I miss seeing you out and about. This is, it's incredible that we're still here, but I am grateful that we are here.
Yes, me too.
Yep,
COVID
and I'm
definitely
grateful.
been a problem.
Exactly. And I'm grateful to be having this conversation with my brother, who I've known. Yes. I mean, I was thinking about it as I was, preparing for this podcast. I was like, damn, I have known Wayne since the very beginning of my career, which is over. Exactly, which is over 20 years. So that's incredible.
Don't age us.
I know. Okay.
Not enough they already know, but damn, you got to rub it in.
Right. But I'm just saying, I've known you since I started out in this industry. And I was thinking about, just how you've always played such a pivotal role in helping to push our culture forward. And you've always done it, with such grace and such humility. You've never gotten industry, although you could have easily done that because you've worked with the biggest artists, you know what I mean? And so I just think, you're amazing for that. But, I want to talk to you about how, what your secret is behind that, like how you were able to sort of maintain such a long career in this industry, and sort of be such a role model for young executives, right? Like you continue to push our culture forward. You continue to be so relevant, but you do it behind the scenes. You're not rah-rah about it. And so just talk to me about like how you do that.
First off, thank you for that.
Thank you.
Nicole, for me, it's simple, right? I've always been a man of principle, and with principle comes character. And if you have character, that in itself builds success, right? So success for me is not warranted on how much money you got in the bank account. It's what kind of character you are as a man or a woman. So I've always prided myself on being an individual to push myself forward, and as I'm moving forward, bring people with me. I think that's a very important thing. No matter how strong you are as a foundational force, the core of that has to be other people holding you up, right? We can't do any of this that we do alone, although it feels as if, a lot of people out here have that machismo and, the ego-driven delivery in terms of how they live their lives and how they do their work. And, it took me a long time to get to a place to understand how to check my ego, and then doing it allowed me to be balanced. So I'm grounded in my faith in God. I'm grounded in the fact that I have a spiritual connection and an alignment with God that shines through me. So that light is what I try to pass on to others, because that's the only thing that moves me forward. It's simple. I get asked a lot of times how I'm able to be who I am as a man in such a cutthroat business that kind of dissolves people and just, sucks them up and absorbs them. And it's easy. Like, I'm in an industry. I'm not, an industry person. So I can live my life the way that I need to live my life and do the things that I need to do while still getting the job done. Effectively, for me, I believe that the job as a manager, if you will, or an executive, is to assure that whomever they're working with from a client-based standpoint reaches their goal. And the goal for any artist is to get to a stage.
Mm.
Stage is where the people are, right?
Mm.
Without that stage, the consumer can't buy into who you are from an authenticity standpoint, from a musical standpoint, from an audio standpoint. They just can't really understand it outside of just listening to music. Like, listening to music is one thing. Hearing you in the club is another. But you getting in front of them and exchanging that energy, that's what's critical, right? So you got a lot of artists out here over the years that have been considered touring artists. But then you have other artists that are actually artists that tend to just go for the bag, right? That bag artists are the ones that have more of a difficult time maintaining success because their audience is not real, it's not true. It's, you know what I'm saying? And this, it's fly by night, you're in, you're out. So you really, really got to connect. So I know I took it a little left in terms of your question, but ultimately I think it all kind of ties in together in terms of how I operate. I like to bring men and women to the art.
Mm.
So it's one thing for you to be creative. That's great. Shit, we all are in our own little way. But how do you maintain that creativity and turn that into a business? That means if you as a brand aren't identifying yourself as a brand, or you as a person aren't identifying yourself as a man or a woman who wants to do what that brand needs, then ideally you've already lost. So I'd rather teach an individual from my own, you know what I'm saying, understanding of what life is, how to delve into a deeper understanding of self in order to bring that forth in any and everything that they do.
Mm. Yes. Yes to all. And that's why we are grateful for you,
Thank you.
because, I mean, this industry needs you. It needs more of that. And you talked about, being a bag artist versus, just being an artist that's in this for the long haul and that's dedicated to this and dedicated to sort of, this culture and moving it forward. And that's exactly what Biggie was.
Indeed.
That's what he was. Like, I mean, he definitely was about his money, but I mean, he was so dedicated to the hip hop culture and putting it on the map and making sure it was respected. And you played such a pivotal role in his career. I mean, he was, you worked with him as he was your artist, but like, he was also family to you. So can you, first, how did you meet him? Like, how did you even, like, how did that relationship even start?
I mean, well, it started early. I got into the music business by managing Rex and Effect. By that time, Mark Pitts, who's my cousin, was also at Howard with Puff. At that time, as Rex and Effect was coming down, which is about me being probably about 8 years in, he was starting to come up. And as that was happening, that transition put Mark in a position where he was managing Big and asked me to come on board to, kind of help manage and guide, the situation as it related to him coming into this situation, because he had Big and Faith and Changing Faces at the same time. So I met Big in Uptown's offices after hearing a demo probably about 6 months prior. I went up to the office, and that was the first time we actually laid eyes on one another. But he came into the room, and you can just feel his presence. And he was a gentle giant in so many different ways, but definitely about his business. Very poised, very concise in terms of what he wanted to do. And one of the things that I love most about Big is the fact that it wasn't just about him.
Yes.
Right. Everything he did for him and his people. When I say everything, he took these young brothers and he made sure that they were off the streets. If he's gonna be off the streets, you got to be with me, right? I'm not gonna leave you behind. No man left behind type of the mentality. But I think that there's been a lot of individuals who are critical and important in his life. You know what I'm saying? One to me that is most critical was D-Rock. I think that D-Rock, taking the charge and doing what he needed to do to protect the integrity of his friendship, knowing that this man can get them all out, that's something that you don't get too often, right? And if that moment didn't happen, then the question is big. What we have Notorious BIG that we know, right? So I think that was a very pivotal time and a very pivotal person in his life. And saying for me, it's just it's a beauty to have that type of relationship, but it's also a beauty to understand why it exists. And it exists because of the type of man that Notorious Christopher Wallace Biggie was.
That's right. That
Yeah.
is right. So on March 1st, Netflix is going to release the new documentary, Biggie, I Got a Story to Tell. In
Mm-hmm.
your words, tell us why, Big Story is still so important. Like this Big is larger than life,
Right.
us into our culture, but like he's still so relevant to this day. Like he still is one of the greatest rappers of all time.
Right.
Tell us why. Tell us
Uh,
like why this documentary, like why telling this story is still going to be so relevant and important to our culture.
there's layers to this, man, and
So
layers that
many layers, Wayne.
yeah,
When I thought
there's a
about
lot
it,
of layers.
I was like, sheesh, we
Yeah,
need
there's a
2
lot of
hours,
layers.
not 20 minutes.
Yeah, there are layers to him. So with the layers, there's been a lot of stories told about Notorious B.I.G., but I don't think that there was enough stories about Christopher Wallace, right?
Right.
And the origin of where he comes from, the origin of his rap style, the origin of what I'm saying, his flow and his ability to play that wordsman that he was. That takes a lot of energy. It takes a lot of time, and at the end of the day, there are a lot of nuances in his life that helped him catapult himself to become what we consider the greatest rapper of all time, right? Now, with that, there's a lot of stories that have been told, but then there's a lot of stories that have not. So the story of young Christopher
Mm.
is the focus here, because young Christopher and the people who were around him, inspiring him, the things he saw outside of his window, the things that he's experienced when traveling, being of, a different ethnicity in terms of just, where he's from, right? It's one thing to be from Brooklyn, but then there's a layer behind that that people didn't know, right? So these are the things that you'll find out in this particular story. Some people knew it, but some people didn't. But now I think that this here story tells us exactly what is needed for us to understand why today, when we put on a radio and we hear Notorious B.I.G. 25 years after his death, that it's relevant because, right? And that because is because of him and what it is he actually dedicated himself to be for us. His music is timeless, and it's timeless because it's a story that's never ever ending. Not just his, but yours and mine and
Mm.
anybody of the culture. It's
Right.
a story that we can identify with. There are songs that when he's speaking to you, it feels like it's so visceral, it's so real, it's just so in your face that you can't deny, wow. If you weren't there to witness it, but you were around individuals who were, you get it.
Mm-hmm.
Kids today are getting it because the music cuts through, right? The music makes you feel, no matter what generation we are in now, that, oh, wow, I can relate to this. This feels like something that Drake would say, or, a J. Cole in his own way would say, or, any artists of today, these young brothers out here doing what they're doing, and the sisters are killing it. So be clear, I'm
Right.
100% rocking with the sisters in terms of
Right.
hip hop.
Okay.
The game has definitely changed a lot, but no matter how much it's changed, Biggie was always one of those staple mates. And I'm proud to be a part of his life. I'm proud to be a part of his career. And I'm more proud to be connected to the one person that is more important than any one of us, and that's Miss Wallace.
Wallace, yes.
She's become my second mother. Her and my mother chat all the time about that fact. Like, she borrows me, but she loves me.
Mhm.
And I love her just like I would love, my mother. And at the end of the day, we've done a lot over the years to secure the legacy of Notorious B.I.G. And these stories that are being told are only being told so that the legacy continues.
That's right. That's right. Well, Wayne, I just want to say thank you. Thank you for all that you have done for us and for our culture. Thank you for continuing to tell Biggie's story because, like he is one of our cultural pioneers, cultural icons, and the fact that we have this access, to him and his life and his story is due in large part to your work and your efforts. So, just thank you. I'm
Thank you.
looking forward to the documentary on March 1st. My husband is like, nothing can happen.
Nothing happens no more first.
In, right?
Absolutely. That's what's up, Matt. I feel you, bro. Thank you very much. I love you guys. This is an amazing opportunity. And, you know, I know that people are going to be happy at what they're viewing. I think that, you know, again, I feel very, very proud. I had a strong team of individuals that, you know what I'm saying, helped me get here. The director, Emmett, you know, our producing partners, you know, Puff, Mark. You know, it's just so many people that were involved in this process, Little C's, you know what I'm saying? And I honestly just want to give love to everybody who has been connected to Christopher and to every fan out there that have supported over the years. You know what I'm saying? From the bottom of my heart, I'm gracious and I'm thankful.
And we are thankful for you. So March 1st, we will all be tuned in, supporting.
Tuned in and rock out.
That's it. That's it. And let's do this again soon, Wayne. I miss you.
Anytime you want. I miss you too, sis. Anytime I'm here.
All right. Sounds like a plan. Thank you.
Have a blessed day.
Amythyst Kiah is an incredible example of how songwriters can channel the lessons of history to teach us about how we're living right now. On her debut album, Dig, Kiah mixed covers of classic folk and blues songs with stirring originals, all sung in her powerful alto voice. Kiah later joined her fellow ASCAP members, Layla McCullough and Allison Russell, plus Rhiannon Giddens, to form the all-women of color supergroup, Our Native Daughters. They won great acclaim for their 2019 record, Songs of Our Native Daughters, which shined a new light on African American women's stories of struggle, resistance, and hope. One of Kiah's original songs from that album, Black Myself, earned a Grammy nomination for Best American Roots Song and won Song of the Year at the 2019 Folk Alliance International Awards. Just last week, Kiah released a killer solo version of Black Myself, combining her passion for roots music and her love of alt-rock. And on February 22nd, the Smithsonian Channel released a documentary about Our Native Daughters with new insights into the group's music and mission. Now, here is ASCAP's Sarah Feingold in conversation with the brilliant Amythyst Kiah.
I wanted to start off by, asking how you are. I'm not trying to mean that as a personal attack, but just wondering how you are coping right now, how you're feeling in this. We're just probably hit a year of this, of being inside and being isolated. So I was wondering how you're coping with that, as we all are.
Yeah, I mean, throughout this year, for the most part, like, I've been able to make things work financially. So that's been really good. I've been able to continue to have virtual gigs, obviously not paying the same as when I was on the road, but using that money instead of like having to figure out, the hotel and gas and all that kind of stuff. Now it's like, okay, so now I need to buy lighting and I need to buy a microphone and I need, if I want my videos to be, because one of the biggest complaints that I hear from audiences is that, like, I'd like to watch more of these shows, but a lot of times, like, the sound isn't good, the video isn't good. And not everyone and every musician has varying situations going on in their life. And so not everybody's able to drop down some money on equipment. And it took me about, I would say 4 or 5 months really to slowly build on everything. So it wasn't like I just went out and bought a bunch of equipment and then I was great. It was like a very gradual process. And just figuring out, okay, well, now this money can go toward buying equipment, I guess, instead of, spending money on gas. I mean, now it's like I fill up my tank every couple weeks now instead of every other day. So, but anyway, so yeah, on a financial front, things have been working out, which has been really fortunate. But the mental health aspect of it has been a very much of a roller coaster because, the way that we communicate with one another has totally changed, and our brains aren't wired to only communicate to people on screen, or we only see 1 or 2 people, the same 2 people every day. That's not normally how we were used to operating. So, and then, having those days where it's like, oh yeah, I'd love to go and, grab a pint or grab some food down at, such and such bar. And then it's like, and you see that other people are doing it, but it's like, at least in Tennessee anyway. I mean, there's I mean, that's a whole other thing, because obviously every other state is like dealing with this differently. And like, I don't think there's an issue with having certain places open if they're like doing like half capacity, if they're enforcing masks, if people are spaced out, if everyone's respecting it. I don't see an issue with it. But sometimes I'll drive past restaurants and like, just, it's like nothing's happening. And, Asheville, North Carolina has actually been really good about it, because we went and ate for Valentine's Day. We went to a restaurant in Asheville. Nice. And like they were doing the right thing. Everybody was being respectful. Like, it was great. But I mean, that's probably the first date that me and my girlfriend have been on in like 6 months, so, it's, these are very few and far in between kind of outings. And we're, very specific about, okay, well, if they're not doing this, this, and this, then we're just not going to go and deal with like the feeling of being really like sad about it. It's just, so anyway, it's just really just like dealing with that. And, I've been going to therapy now for the past like 4 or 5 years, which has been immensely helpful for me in a lot of ways.
Listen to how great therapy is. Everybody who's listening, we highly recommend therapy.
No,
I go to therapy. Amythyst goes to therapy.
I mean, my girlfriend goes to therapy. Like the thing is like we all, in some capacity, we have things that happen in our lives that we don't even necessarily realize at the time how it's affecting our overall outlook on life. Because I didn't really, I didn't start going, like I said, I didn't start going to therapy till like, 4 or 5 years ago, and really started unpacking. Like there was lots of like, sort of like fears and anxieties and apprehensions that I never really understood why or where they were coming from. And having that sort of outside perspective, especially like, and sometimes it's hard to find a therapist that you can really connect with, because that's also important too. So that's like a whole journey. I got really lucky and got referred to someone that right off the bat we connected, and she's independent. She's an independent like freelance therapist. So she's not connected with like a corporation. So like, I don't have a fear of her like leaving the company and then I have to find someone else. Like, so it's, there's obviously like, that can be a struggle in and of itself too, to find therapy, but like if you can find it, I think it really is worth it. I think people, have a tendency to like, it's almost as if like, well, if I just ignore it, I don't have a problem. But like, I mean, that never really works, And
that's the double-edged sword, is that you really have to be ready to go into therapy. Like you can't just go into therapy half-heartedly saying, well, like this isn't going to work. That's the thing. It's like you have to really be like, okay, now I'm really ready to fix this and to delve into this.
Absolutely. I mean, that's what happened with me is, yeah, exactly. I mean, that's what happened with me. I was like, I went through like, I had like a bit of a rough patch for a couple of years, like in my late 20s. And, my dad, who he's been to therapy before, and he was just like, he was noticing that just something wasn't really going on right with me. Like, I wasn't really like myself. And he was like, hey, I really think you need to, maybe you need to talk to somebody, because you have so much talent. You have, you have a really good chance of being able to make this your career. And I'm worried that you're not focused the way you should be. Cause I was just kind of like on autopilot for a couple of years, So I was like, I finally was like, I need to make a change. I need to do something different. And so that, but it does come down to like, you have to make the choice, but then it's also great if you have someone, close to you in your life that also is like, that keeps harping on you about it. Cause I mean, and of course it's annoying in the beginning because you don't want to admit that you have a problem and that you need to fix it, So yeah, I mean, that's been great, but especially like during this pandemic and like, basically we've all had to like completely readjust our lives, regardless of what your career is. We've all had to adjust our lives in varying ways. And for me, the biggest change was going from being a touring musician to being a amateur video producer in my home, and like, it's, you know, day after day, like working like in the same space. And, you know, it's just, yeah, I mean, it's just mentally, it's just like having my work be in the same place that, you know, is supposed to be like my sanctuary, and trying to like separate that it's a bit of a challenge when it all kind of blurs together like that. But
kind of disconnecting me from reality a little bit too. The fact that I'm like, my life has never been so isolated to one space, so isolated to just the one person I'm with. It's kind of making me, I don't know, I have no sense of time anymore. I'm just sort of like floating in this period of like, this is where I wake up, go to sleep every day, and this is where I am all day, every day. And I don't know what it's going to do long term to the way my brain works almost. It's just, I have no idea what we're going to come out of this looking like.
Yeah, it's definitely, it's like a whole new frontier. I mean, I know yesterday, for the first time in like, you know, almost a week and a half, the sun was shining and it was 50 degrees outside. So I'm in Johnson City, Tennessee, Northeast Tennessee. So, but yeah, so I was like, you know, because I had to get ready for like a live stream that I was doing later on that night. But I was like, you know, I've got a little time. I'll go out to one of the parks and just go for like a 30-minute walk or something. And well, obviously it's Sunday, the sun's out, and like, I knew that there were going to be other people out there, but the park is, you know, pretty big, and like, it's super easy to like, you know, to do your own thing. But I just, you know, I had my mask on, and it was so weird. I was walking, and like, I would see like, you know, like about maybe, you know, 5 or 6 people like kind of spread out, but like walking in my direction. And I was just like, I just like had this involuntary reaction of like, oh no, I'm in danger. And then I like cut through the field instead. Like, I just found myself for the whole 30 minutes, like finding ways to avoid walking past people. And I'm like, this is supposed to be relaxing. And now my brain is just like freaking the hell out, you know? Exactly. So yeah, I don't know. It's just kind of, I don't know. It's my, you know, my mind, and I've talked to my girlfriend a lot about this, like my mind now, when I'm in a place where there are like people, outside of the grocery store, like, I don't know, it just feels different. And I don't know. I just think it's going to be a process to get back to whatever it was we were doing before, you know.
Speaking of what we were doing before, you were talking about the past 4 or 5 years, you know, being in therapy, you know, working on stuff for ourselves, because, you know, we do owe that to ourselves to try to, you know, do that. And I was reading some things you were saying about working with the women in Our Native Daughters, and how working with 3 other Black women in Our Native Daughters put me in the position where I finally had the courage to put these words out, talking about Black myself. And I was wondering if you had if it's hard being separated from them, like not being able to create with them in person. I don't know if you have been able to, but I don't think you have right now, maybe safely with tests or something. But I'm wondering if it's weird to be separated from people that you're normally collaborating with a lot, and if you're close to them and they're giving you confidence, if it's weird to sort of be separated from your community in that way.
I mean, yeah, it's really weird. I mean, because we were gonna go on tour like in fall. We were gonna have another set of tour dates in fall of 2020. We had something set up for spring. Like, we were gonna play like more shows, and we were also talking about you know, finding a time to get together to like write and record again. But yeah, I mean, now it's been in a situation where it's been really difficult, and, you know, we've been able to like keep up, and like we've had like a few like Zoom calls to just catch up, see how everybody's doing, and just kind of, you know, keep the conversation going. And work, even like writing remotely, has also been difficult, because all of us have projects that are coming out this year, like individual projects. So it's kind of like, between my virtual shows and like getting things ready for like, you know, for the single release and then for the album release, you know, it's really been difficult to like really do any writing specifically for that. And we're all in the same boat. Like, we're all, you know, we're doing our solo projects. And so it's definitely like, you know, put a bit of a halt on what was going to be. But but yeah, I mean, I think we're still going to be able we still plan on, doing more live shows, and planning for another record, but it's just kind of like for the foreseeable future, we're not 100% sure when that all will happen. I mean, it really just depends on, we have to play by ear at this point. So,
With
but
everything. Yeah. I mean, does the fact that all of you have something that's like really yours, you're all like very prolific creators in your own right, does that kind of in a way take pressure off of when you create together? Like because you have the work that is, your own, and then you have something else that you're working on with I think about in Black Myself, how you say, I'm surrounded by many loving arms. And I think about is that the sort of community that you guys foster together when you're collaborating?
Yeah, I mean, I think the pressure, I would say the pressure is different. I wouldn't necessarily say that. I mean, I guess in some ways, yes, it is easier. I mean, for example, I had a verse that I'd written. It was for what would become Blood and Bones. I had written a verse like a year ago, like a year prior to us recording in 2018. And I just didn't know what to do with it. And I was like, hey, Allison, I have this chorus that I wrote, and based on what the content is, I really feel like this could be something that could be turned into something for this project. And so, she took it, and like, she's a night owl. So she stayed up, like wrote some verses, sent it back to me the next morning. And I'm like, whoa, this is awesome. So, I mean, pressure as far as like songwriting goes, I think with the co-writing aspect, especially if you really are like on the same wavelength with the other person, then like it takes the pressure off of songwriting, and that, that you can count on this other person to like, to help you be able to make something that you're really happy with. Where the pressure changes is now we are taking on, this responsibility of telling the story of our ancestors, essentially. And we're standing on the shoulders of these people, of the people before us, people that had been enslaved, people that, were abolitionists, people that, people that just fought against, tyranny and white supremacy, basically. So there's a different kind of pressure to like deliver something in a way that authentically represents who we are and where we're coming from. And that, when people hear it, that they can, relate or understand where we're coming from. So it was like, there was this like greater purpose beyond just me that I was, a part of. So the pressure is just a little bit different in that it's like, I'm trying to like adequately tell the stories of people that suffered tragedies that I have never had to face. I've faced different kinds of tragedy, but nothing like being kidnapped and thrown on a ship and stripped of everything that you've ever known and dropped off in a totally different place, and then and not being free. Like that is a whole other level of something that I'm so thankful that I've never had to experience, because we don't control, when we're born and who we're going to be. We don't control any of that, So yeah, and we were happy with what we did, with what we came up with. And, when it went into the when the whole idea was to do this project and doing the archive. So then when it became this, we didn't start out with this as we're going to be a band and tour this record. And then it turned into that. And so that really just shows the testament of like people now in the 21st century, it seems like there are enough people that are ready to like continue this discussion. And then you see with all the things that happened in 2020 with us being in lockdown. And then when George Floyd hit, like stories like George Floyd have been happening. Like that was nothing new. But because we're in lockdown, it's like more people were able to really like think about what the heck's going on, And so that's why I think it was important, to re-record Black Myself and release it as a single on my upcoming record. And then also it kind of just happened to fall in with the time that the documentary was going to be released, which is released. This is coming out tonight on Smithsonian Channel. So I think like this is another way of keeping the conversation going. And this is the longest sustained talking about like race issues that in mainstream media. I mean, you go to Netflix, there's like, you know, the whole black movies of just black stories. Same with Hulu.
Black Lives. Yep.
Yeah. And I'm just like, and there's one part of me that's like, that kind of wants that. There's a part of me that there's a cynical side of me that wants to like come out and be like, well, I wonder how long this is going to last. But truly, this has lasted a lot longer than I anticipated, because usually something happens, people get mad, and then we all forget about it again and we go on about our lives. But so I don't know. I think between, with this documentary coming out, maybe releasing the single, to try and just like keep this as part of the conversation, I think is really important, and keep that momentum going with that. Cause these are serious issues. And I mean, it's just something that I think overall is really, going to help push that conversation along, so.
100%. And I'd love to talk about the actual process of you re-recording that song and what you wanted to get through with it musically, the changes you made to it that you felt were important and interesting. I'm really interested in listening to the two songs next to each other and seeing how they feel different. So I wonder if you can speak to that a little bit.
Yeah. So, with this newer version, on my solo shows, and, I have like there's a group of guys that are the backing band that we've played, like we play like, play shows. The version that we ended up doing, I kind of wanted to have like a more like kind of rockin' kind of version. Mm-hmm. And so that's kind of what we did in the band. And then when we got to the studio, initially I hadn't even initially planned to put Black Myself on the record. But when I met up with Tony Berg is the guy that produced the record, and then my A&R rep Mark Williams, they both were like, have you ever thought about re-recording Black Myself? And I'm like, well, yes, I have thought about re-recording, and I definitely would love to. I want to do sort of like a more kind of rock version of it. I think that would be fun. And they're like, well, what do you think about putting it on this record? And I'm like, I didn't actually think of that. And we started talking about like, again, that sustained momentum about, with like, Black Lives Matter and like race issues, like this could be, a good opportunity to like, reintroduce the song to the world in a new way and like keep the conversation going. And I'm like, yeah, that's a really great idea. So we ended up, we re-recorded the song, and we didn't do it exactly the way that I did in the band. In fact, there was kind of a discussion about whether or not, because there's actually a take that I did where I played electric guitar and then played acoustic guitar. And something about the combination of the acoustic guitar rhythm and riff with that particular drum pattern, it was kind of unusual. You don't really hear that as often. And so we kind of leaned into the like more unusual aspect, and then bringing in Blake Mills played electric guitar on that track. So sort of bringing in the kind of crunchier, heavier rock thing. So it turned the song into this very like a much more like kind of intricate sort of rock piece than what me and my band were doing before, was like kind of like borderline kind of garage rock, just like freaking out kind of thing, So this one was definitely a little more controlled, but still packs, I really feel like it still packs a lot of power, So yeah, that's yeah.
Yeah, kind of when I was listening to it, I was thinking of listening to it in like a really small bar where there's peanut shells on the ground, and it's like the sounds all around me.
That's awesome. Yeah.
So
like you're at Texas Roadhouse, and
exactly, yeah.
Or no, is that Logan's? I think Logan's Roadhouse is the one that has the peanut shells on the floor.
Yeah,
so yeah.
I haven't been able to go to peanut shells in a while because my boyfriend's allergic to peanuts now. So the past 5 years I've been peanuts on the ground, but it's in my mind, like everything is now.
Yeah. Yeah, we want to be as safe as we can with the peanut vibes, but yeah.
I was wondering if you remember when you first started getting interested in the the legacy of, Black music in America, the stories of, the people who came before you. Do you remember a time when you started thinking about that and you started engaging with it in a different way?
Yeah, I mean, I think the first time that I really started thinking about that seriously, I was undergrad at East Tennessee State University, and I was getting interested in like American roots music, and they have a program there called Bluegrass, Old Time, and Country Music Studies, which I ended up getting a degree in. They got the degree approved like while I was still in college, and I just immediately I just switched because I was pretty much hooked. I was in a string band. I was like totally devoted to like wanting to do something with music at that point. So but yeah, I would say probably I want to say maybe 2008, 2007, something like that. I ended up taking American folk music class because at this point I wasn't totally sure if it was something that I wanted to study, but I've always been curious about music, and I didn't know anything about old time music or folk music at all because I grew up, listening to Tori Amos and Bjork and Radiohead and Blink 182 and Green Day and whatever, it's mostly alternative stuff.
But
yeah. So I was just sort of, this was a total new thing, but I was and I've also loved listening to world music and stuff like that. My parents had a pretty wide music palette, so I heard all kinds of things, and they end up all coming into my songwriting somehow. But I took this course and it really explored that the West African and British Celt music traditions make up a huge chunk of Southern music and Appalachian music. Learning that the banjo is from West Africa, and then learning that Black people also play fiddles, they play banjos, and really kind of just being oh, okay, so here's this entire history that has been essentially, if you listen and look at any country station ever since the beginning of the recording industry, I mean, we had Charlie Pride. There's not been hardly any Black people being heralded in country music. And a lot of it is because a lot of them switched to playing the blues because radio stations wouldn't just, record executives didn't want to record Black people playing quote unquote hillbilly music. They compartmentalized it. And so that affected so much change, in how people, identified themselves with music, I mean, obviously we had some great innovative genres come about like jazz and soul and all that kind of stuff. But underneath all of that, there is this this schism that was created where, country was not ever associated with being Black. And so,
and yet so much of the music in country music comes from Black culture, music
right,
in America
exactly.
in general. And it's so fascinating. I mean, it's not fascinating. It's just such a classic, double think that people can, when, for example, Old Town Road, when they were it's not country enough, when you're why? That's
yeah.
It's
if you listen to Florida Georgia Line and you listen to Lil Nas X and you say that and you're saying one's country and one's not, what is the difference?
Yeah, what are you going to tell us?
Yeah, it's come on.
It's so transparent that you're and do you think that people are better these days? I think that the new guard, the next generation is a little bit more open-minded with this, but I think people are getting a little better at disconnecting from the concept of genre being so rigid. I think people are getting a little bit more open-minded about being able to exist between the genre boundaries, because I think that so much of what those genres are based on is a lot of stereotype and racism and all of these weird categories that were really just based on how people wanted to shape the music industry, not what was fair or true.
Right, exactly.
Are you seeing an improvement in the way that people are sort of letting go of that rigidity these days? I know it's still there in a lot of places, but.
Yeah, I mean, I think what I've immediately seen with my audiences, and then just also looking at other my other contemporary musicians, I definitely do feel more and more people are starting to let go of that, which is really refreshing. And I think to see that in the Americana world in particular, to see that sort of that kind of breaking away of this sort of rigid idea, you know, a singer-songwriter is like, you know, a white male that drinks a little too much and smokes a lot of cigarettes. Like that's sort of like the quintessential like singer-songwriter troubadour guy, you know, and like there's nothing wrong with that. Like no disrespect to no disrespect to that demographic, but that's kind of what's heralded as like a singer-songwriter. And you know, if you're a singer-songwriter, you're a singer-songwriter regardless of what instrument you play or whatever. So I think seeing that being, you know, slowly dismantled has been really cool. And like being part of, you know, wanting to, you know, to dismantle that idea. Yeah, I mean, I think honestly for me, the Carolina Chocolate Drops for me was like the first band that they absolutely blew my mind. Cause I'm like, not only are they playing like, you know, playing streaming music, but they're playing it in this exciting, fresh way. And like, you know, from then on I was like, well, I really draw, and then I started really drawing a lot of like inspiration from so many different kinds of like old time music. And, you know, my ultimate goal in the end was to try to figure out a way to like combine the stuff that I'm listening to on these old records with my alternative background, because I felt like because to me, the commonality between like a lot of the older recordings I was listening to, like field recordings and like alternative music, is that both recordings included artists that like had developed their own distinct voice for different reasons. I mean, the reason why you would hear distinct voices from field recordings is because they came from a community. They weren't like trying to imitate somebody else so they can get a record deal. They were just doing what they do. And then with alternative music, a lot of the people that do alternative music are like, they're, you know, they were the people in their communities that were different, and they were kind of, you know, alienated, and they had to like find their own way. So there's like a commonality there that really kind of touched me in that way. And so I wanted to find a way, how can I like, you know, bring all this together? And after 3 years of working on this record where I attempt to do that, it finally panned out. So yeah.
Damn, that is a wonderful thing.
Yeah.
That's something that you've been putting so much of yourself into for so long, to be fully actualized. Mm-hmm. And I was wondering if the record that you just made is, I was listening to it and it's wonderful. It's in a lot of parts, it's definitely very vulnerable and very heavy. And I'm wondering, if that was a difficult thing for you to do, if it was cathartic, if it was a mix of everything, or if it took some time, because sometimes you'd have to step away from certain things to.
Yeah, I mean, when I initially went into to record a record, it was actually at the same studio that Her Native Daughter's record was recorded. And at that point, I I had some like old time songs that I'd been playing for a while, and then like had some originals that I'd already recorded before. And, you know, once all was said and done, I was like, I don't know, this isn't like, I was holding back, and I didn't realize I was holding back until afterwards. And I'm like, you know, why am I regurgitating the same thing I've already done when I know there's more here. But a big part of that was like, I had writer's block. But after the Our Native Daughters project, I ended up writing like 2 or 3 more songs. There were songs that I'd written that I had played with my backing band, but had never really recorded. And I'm like, let's just get all of these songs. And all of them were about, and, you know, were obviously like various points in my life where I was like struggling with identity, with relationships. And for me, it was a moment in time to really like pull all of this on a record, and really like directly address me fighting like my own self-doubt and inner demons. And it made sense to piece all of that together. Because music has always been therapy for me first and foremost. So like the idea of playing music communally was something that was a very foreign concept to me by the time I got to college, because I had been playing guitar in my room for like 10 years. So it was very, it's been a very kind of, it was very jarring transition to say the least. But I think having these songs together, I would say that it's not really that it was necessarily, I think the difficult aspect of it was like, do I want to keep reimagining old time songs and not let people get to know who I am as a person? Or do I risk putting out that vulnerability? And I got to that point where I was like, I think the very reason why I even started wanting to play music is because there were artists I was listening to that were very open with their vulnerability. Like Tori Amos was very amazing at being vulnerable in such a beautiful way. And so to me as an artist, I think if music helped me get through the things I was going through, then I think that's what I want my music to be. I want that to be something that it can help people get through hard times, because that's how music has helped me. So it's just fulfilling that, making that come around full circle. So I was like, well, this is my story and this is what happened to me. And, here it is, I guess,
And I think that's extra important right now, because I spend, sometimes I'm feeling really out of sorts. And what I want to do is I want to put on an album and I want to cry. And it's not bad crying. Sometimes I just need to release emotional energy by listening to something that makes me feel a lot and crying.
Yeah, exactly.
And so I think people really need that right now. There's been a few albums I've had on rotation where I'm just like, need this cry, throw that on. Thank you, Katie Crutchfield.
Yeah.
I appreciate what you're doing for me.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And I was wondering if there were any people you can think of now who are really inspiring you, if they're doing something really different or something really that you think is really brazen or cool, just people who you've been hearing what they've been doing and you're like, wow, that's really special.
So things that I've really been seeing lately. So
I know we just, at least I consume media just all day. And in my house, I walk my dog, I consume media. It's the two things I do.
Yeah. Honestly, lately I've been listening to a lot of podcasts. I've gone absolutely crazy with listening to podcasts, and I wasn't really a podcast person before, but I've been going on a lot of, I've been walking normally maybe 30 minutes to an hour every day, depending on what other training I'm going to do the rest of the day. But I try to get a walk in and I just listen to podcasts. And so that's kind of been the big thing. I've been listening to Behind the Bastards by Robert Evans. He's an investigative journalist, and all of his podcasts are he does research on basically horrible people in history, like dictators,
He's got so many to choose from. That must be, 10
it's dictators, and then rich, powerful people that take advantage of other people. There's just so many different things. Yeah, he does them on Mussolini and Stalin and Hitler, but then he also does one on Roy Cohn and Roger Stone and Jeffrey Epstein and so many. Anyway, so that's been really fascinating. And then I started listening to Why Won't You Date Me? Nicole Byer's podcast.
Why Would You Date Me? I listen to every time Nicole Byer puts out a podcast. She did one with Lauren Lapkus called Newcomers, where they took a property, they did Star Wars and then Lord of the Rings. They watched all of it. And
I want to listen to that next. Yeah.
Lord of the Rings. I listened to the Lord of the Rings season. I love Lord of the Rings. So it's very funny to hear them just be miserable.
Yeah.
They're just what are these names? What's going on? I have no idea what's happening. But yeah, Nicole Byer is just the best.
Yeah, she's so cool. Well, what's funny story with Nicole Byer is that before last year, I didn't know who she was, just because because prior to last year, I wasn't as typed into pop culture just because I was so busy and I just wasn't paying attention to that kind of stuff. And she shared my account in her stories, because she went to the Troubadour to see Yola, and I opened. This was in the beginning of last year. So she started following me and gave a shout out on her thing. And I'm this is really cool. She's got a big following, but I don't really know who she is. And so I was well, maybe I'll dig into her stuff at some point. And then, during quarantine, I was I kept seeing her podcast, pop up as a suggestion. And I'm all right, I'll listen to it. And I'm oh my God, she's so funny. She's awesome. So anyway, but it was crazy. She follows me on Instagram. Say
I love
what?
baking videos where she's doing her roller skating. She's just
Yeah.
the best.
I love that. And like the pole dance stuff, like it's great.
Yeah, the
She's
pole
so,
stuff's
she's so
amazing.
cool.
What
Yeah.
a talented, multi-talented person. Like, just, I
Yeah.
hope you're doing well. If you're out there, Nicole, I hope you're doing
Yeah.
fantastic. And thank you.
Absolutely. Yeah. She's awesome. And then like lately I actually had to do a WSM playlist for the radio, for like a guest DJ spot, which I think it came out the day that the single dropped, which I'd never like, and it was like a thing where I like pre-recorded like kind of like a script, and then they were editing it into like the songs that I chosen. And I really enjoyed it. Actually, I was kind of like, I don't know, how would I do on, I mean, I've listened to a lot of podcasts, so like, I don't know, maybe I could do this, but I really had a lot of fun doing it. And one song that ended up being that got on the list is Trixie Mattel's cover of Video Games. And like
ASCAP member, fellow ASCAP member, Trixie Mattel.
Oh, really? Nice. Yeah. So me and my partner and my partner's roommate, we started watching like RuPaul's Drag Race because I hadn't watched any of them. And so we like started from season 1. So we've been going through right now we're in season 8. And like desperately trying to not have stuff spoiled, but like my girlfriend hasn't been as successful as I have because I'm not on social media as much. So I was able to like kind of miss some of that.
Yeah.
But I was on Spotify kind of picking out like, going through my old playlist and picking out what songs I wanted. And Trixie Mattel came up and it said Video Games. And I'm like, I wonder what this song's about. Cause like, I'm thinking, well, I think she plays video games. So like, I'm just, I was kind of wondering. And I heard the auto harp and I'm like, the auto harp, what the heck? Like no one's recording with the auto harp. And then the lone like desperado cowboy whistles, and then she started singing and I'm like, oh my god, this is, because I love the album Born to Die, like it's one of my favorite records. And oh my god, like I just want Trixie, I want her to like do the whole album. So I've been like digging into like Trixie's music and I'm like, this is so great. So yeah, now I like follow her. I've listened to a couple of her podcasts too with Katya, who was my other like favorite drag queen. So anyway, I'm living it up with these podcasts and this drag stuff. Since I can't see drag shows right now, I'm just so living vicariously through that show and everybody. So
one day we'll be able to go to a drag show again.
I know. I can't wait.
I'm gonna ask you one last question. And this is kind of annoying because I know we all just think about the things we miss, but like the other day I was talking about how just a random thing, how I really want to walk down the street eating an ice cream cone. I live in Brooklyn, so it's like I'm very much in my apartment. I go and I walk my dog, but we don't do much else. When it's nice out, we sit in the parks, but it's winter, it's snowing.
Yeah.
And I was thinking, I just really miss feeling good about like eating an ice cream cone and walking down the street. Is there a random thing that you think about sometimes where you're like, I've never thought about that before, but now that I don't do it anymore, I miss it?
One thing that I really do miss is me and my girlfriend would go to, there's a local restaurant here in Johnson City called Main Street Pizza Company. Mm-hmm. Awesome food. And we would go to pint night on Tuesdays, $2 pints. And they have they pretty much, they have like your standard like domestic drafts, but then they also like would have different microbrew craft beers as well, for $2. So that's actually like when we first started dating, like she'd always gone to pint night and I'd never really gone. And so that was kind of our thing that we started doing together. And now we've gone, in March, it'll be an entire year without pint night. And sometimes we think about that and we're like, oh man, really miss pint night.
Go back to pint night. That's really cute.
Yeah. So yeah. But I mean, like the restaurant, like they've reopened the restaurant and like they've been spacing out the seating, but the restaurant's also small. So like so it makes more sense to just order the pizza out, because now there's literally like 5 or 6 tables you can sit at, and before the restaurant's full,
nice
and the bar is totally closed off as it should be, so no one can be at the bar. So it's kind of like it just won't be the same until we can have pint night again. So we're just patiently waiting for all the things to be right in the world or something.
Yeah, or closer to that.
Right, exactly.
I'll be putting out the good vibes for us to get there, so you can go to pint night. I'm really hoping that happens for you as soon as it can. Yeah. I really want to thank you for talking to me today. This was a great conversation, Amythyst. I really love the album, so I'm really excited to order. If you're having a vinyl press, I'm very excited to order that. spin
Oh
it?
yeah, there's going to be vinyl. Absolutely. There'll be
Okay,
vinyl.
great.
There'll be, yeah.
I will smack that pre-order button whenever it comes. Really excited about it. But thanks again. This was a great conversation.
Awesome. Thanks for having me. I enjoyed talking with you.
All right. Have a good one.
All right. You too. Bye.
At the virtual ASCAP Experience in summer of 2020, we brought together gospel stars Jason Nelson, Erica Campbell of Mary Mary, and Tye Tribbett to discuss how the gospel community has responded to the social and spiritual challenges we face today. Just for some context, it was a heavy time to have this conversation. We were in the middle of a global pandemic, and there were widespread protests following the death of George Floyd at the hands of a Minneapolis police officer. Here's a short clip from the profound discussion about music's role in helping us heal. First, you'll hear the moderator, Motown Gospel's co-executive director, E.J. Gaines, followed by Erica Campbell, Tye Tribbett, and finally, Jason Nelson.
You know, it's interesting. Each of you are artists, and each of you can sing, but each of you are also songwriters. And I think it's great that each of you are on the panel to be able to speak not just about the sound that you release, but also the sound that you pen, right? The sound that you create. Talk about that, each of you, if you can, in terms of the power of your ability to create from a cathartic place first. Like, does your music heal you first before it heals other people? As you're writing it, do you know that it's going to be for other people? Or sometimes you writing stuff and you're like, you know what, I needed this just to get through my day without even knowing that it's going to impact the world. What is that process like for you all?
Yeah, I definitely write for me first. If I'm having a moment and my heart just starts crying out to the Father, and usually I'll be singing it around my house for like a long time, and Warren will be like, yo, why don't we record that? I go, okay. Usually it's something that I'm saying to get my spirit right, to get my mind right, just to encourage my own heart when life is life, and I'll sing something to just kind of pull myself out. And I don't initially think, oh, this is for people and I can put this on an album. It gets there sometimes. And there are many songs that are just in my phone and just in my memos. And, we just sing around the piano in the house. And so, I have to stop being selfish because there's a lot that I can release that I know is for healing because it's healed me,
Yeah.
Yeah. I agree with that. A lot of my songs come straight out of sound checks and just jamming. So it blesses me first. I feel good about it first. I get the energy off of it first. I'm encouraged by it first. And then there are some songs that I'm sure, everybody can attest to that God is saying, hey, the people need to hear this. You need to tell them this. You know what I mean? So sometimes it's just me and then it's an overflow. And sometimes it's like, hey, tell the people this. But I think it's important to know that. I think it's important to know that, to not just jump in the pool of every wave, and you're not just jumping everybody's wave, because right now the sound that's in the earth right now is that of pain, frustration, and like, yo, we sick of this. You know what I mean? So that's the sound. There is a sound of pain. And that needs to be tended to. Like, what's up? So there are certain people that should respond to pain.
Scared the life out of you. Didn't it scare the life out of you?
I love Tye.
You pay attention. That'll scare you.
That's not pain. That's fear. I'm sorry. So knowing that, my lean, I'm more so on the healing side too, the healing, celebratory, rejoicing, side of the kingdom parade type. So I'm kind of like waiting on my turn to come as far as all of this is concerned.
Yeah, man.
You understand what I'm saying? Not that, my strength is in where we're going to go after this. So I can't wait to release that sound because I'm more on that kingdom. You know what I mean?
Can I ask y'all a question?
Yeah.
So since the world is in pain, does it seem insensitive to sing a song? Because I have songs that only speak to where I'm trying. I don't do well with, please, I'm hurt. I don't do well with those songs. That's not my vibe. You know what I mean? I'm trying, if you will, or if you got time, little old me. I don't write like that. I don't think like that. But it becomes challenging when people now have owned anxiety. They call it mine.
Yeah.
They personally, everybody's depressed, everybody's sad, and I'm not minimizing that. But when you have a song that says I'm positive and I'm not worried and I'm focused and I'm expecting, people be like, that's not just where I am. But I'm like, but that's what he gave me. And so like, God, should I not? I become torn sometimes because people, that's not just where people are, but it's where they need to be.
Right.
We need to be
No.
declaring the victory. We need to be declaring and speaking hope and life over our own lives, as
Yeah.
opposed to glorifying what the enemy is trying to do, you know?
But okay, so I think our responsibility, sometimes we do have to speak to where people are. But one of the blessings of music is to give people hope, to show them where they should be or where they can be. I mean, David wrote, like Psalm 30, weeping may endure for a night, but joy comes in the morning. He was in weeping, but he was talking about joy at the same time. And so what we have to do, I think part of our responsibility as songwriters is to understand what the moment requires, and also understand that every problem needs a solution. So when we write our songs, our lyrics should address where people are, but our lyrics also show people the exit ramp. This is how you get out of it. This is how you find another way. This is how you have hope. This is, Tye talked about the love of God. This is how you embrace the love of God. Some people only need to know that they are loved. That's all they need. And to know that they're loved is enough for them to say, okay, I'll manage through the next 2 weeks of this. I'll deal with the next round of chemo. I'll do what I need to do in order to come out of the stressors that I'm in right now. So as songwriters, part of our responsibility is to be empathetic to what's happening, but not succumb to what we're empathetic to, if that makes sense.
Well, that does it for this episode. Happy Black History Month, and just a reminder to check out our full Black History Month campaign at ascap.com/BHM 2021. There's a ton of illuminating info about how Black ASCAP members have shaped history and continue to make history. Thanks to everyone who made this episode possible. Amythyst Kiah and Wayne Barrow for sharing their experiences, Nicole George Middleton and Sarah Feingold for their supreme interviewing skills, Jonathan Jones from our Rhythm and Soul team for his logistical help, Eitan Rosenblum for editorial, Rachel Choi for graphic design, Kate Cordova for social media support, Sam Hollander and Josh Edmondson for our rad new theme music, and Benjamin Keynes of Sight Sense Productions for audio and video editing. If you'd like to check out our show notes and listen to music mentioned in this episode, visit ascap.com/versed. And if you like what you hear, subscribe, rate, and comment on the show on your favorite streaming platform. Thanks for listening. We'll see you back here next time.